I still replay that moment in my mind, over and over again, like a morbid movie scene on a loop. The sterile smell of the operating room, the bright, unforgiving lights, the muffled sounds of instruments clinking, and then that voice. My grandson, a small, trembling whisper from the doorway, moments before they were about to cut into me. He revealed a secret that stopped everything, a secret that made me question every sacrifice I'd ever made, every ounce of love I'd poured into my family. Was I wrong for what I was about to do? Was I a fool for not seeing it sooner? Tell me honestly, would you have still gone through with it, knowing what I knew in that agonizing split second? My story starts long before that fateful day, in a life that, from the outside, probably looked quite idyllic. I was a proud mother to two wonderful children, a boy named Michael and a girl named Sarah. Michael was my firstborn, a kind and gentle soul, always a little more sensitive than his robust younger sister. He grew up to be a brilliant, hard-working man, married his college sweetheart, Lisa, and together they had my only grandchild, Ethan. Ethan was the light of my life, a sweet, intelligent boy who inherited his father's quiet thoughtfulness and his mother's sharp wit. Sarah, on the other hand, was a whirlwind, spirited, ambitious, and fiercely independent. She'd always forged her own path, and while we sometimes butted heads, I loved her just as fiercely. My husband, bless his soul, passed away a few years ago, leaving a void that was never truly filled. But my children, and especially Ethan, kept my world vibrant. Life was good, or so I thought. Then, about a year ago, Michael started complaining of being tired, more than just the usual work fatigue. He'd always been healthy, so we didn't think much of it at first. But the fatigue deepened, his skin took on an unnatural pallor, and he started losing weight. After several agonizing weeks of tests, the doctors delivered the devastating news. Michael was in advanced renal failure. His kidneys were failing rapidly, and he would need a transplant. The diagnosis hit us like a physical blow. Lisa was distraught, and Ethan, though he tried to be brave, was clearly terrified. I watched my son, my strong, vibrant Michael, slowly fade before my eyes. He started dialysis, a grueling process that drained him of his energy and spirit. But it was clear it was only a temporary solution. He needed a new kidney, and he needed it fast. Naturally, as his mother, I was the first to volunteer. Without a second thought, I went through all the compatibility tests. Sarah, too, stepped forward, and even Lisa. We all wanted to help. The doctors told us that a living donor was always preferable to a deceased donor, as the success rates were much higher. It was a long, anxious wait for the results. Finally, the call came. I was a perfect match. A wave of relief, so profound it almost brought me to my knees, washed over me. I could save my son. I could give him back his life. Sarah was a match too, but not as perfect as mine. Lisa, sadly, wasn't compatible at all. So, the decision was made. I would donate my kidney to Michael. There was no hesitation, no fear, just an overwhelming sense of purpose and love. My son needed me, and I was going to be there for him. The weeks leading up to the surgery were a blur of appointments, pre-op tests, and conversations with the surgical team. Michael was weak but hopeful. Ethan would visit his dad in the hospital, bringing him drawings and telling him about his day, always with a brave face, though I could see the worry in his eyes. Lisa was a pillar of strength, managing everything, but I could tell the stress was wearing her down. Sarah, always practical, made sure I had everything I needed, drove me to appointments, and tried to keep my spirits up with her characteristic blunt humor. Everyone in the family was rallying around Michael, united in our hope for his recovery. I felt a sense of peace, knowing I was doing the right thing. This was what mothers did. We protected our children, no matter the cost. My life had seen its share of ups and downs, but nothing compared to the quiet strength I felt knowing I was about to give my son a second chance at life. I envisioned him, healthy again, playing with Ethan, laughing with Lisa, living the full life he deserved. That vision was my guiding star. The day of the surgery arrived with a mix of anticipation and nerves. I remember the hospital room, the nurses explaining the final procedures, the gown, the Roman IV. Michael was in the room next door, preparing for his part of the procedure. Ethan and Lisa were there, saying their goodbyes before I was wheeled into the operating room. Ethan hugged me tightly, his small arms wrapping around my waist. "Be brave, Grandma," he whispered, his voice muffled against my gown. I smiled, reassuring him. "Always, sweetie, and your dad will be brave too. He'll be better soon." Lisa thanked me again, tears in her eyes. "I don't know how we'll ever repay you, Mom." I just squeezed her hand. "You don't have to, just take care of Michael." As I lay on the gurney, being wheeled down the brightly lit corridor, I remember feeling a strange calm. It was a big operation, but I wasn't scared. I was ready. I was doing this for Michael, for Ethan, for our family. The doors to the operating room loomed large, and I could hear the muted chatter of the surgical team inside. Just as the nurses were about to push me through those double doors, a small figure darted into the hallway, almost unnoticed. It was Ethan. He looked distraught, his face tear-streaked, his usually neatly combed hair disheveled. He was clutching something in his hand, a crumpled piece of paper. "Grandma," he cried out, his voice a frantic gasp, stopping the nurses in their tracks. "Wait, you can't." My heart lurched. What was going on? Why was he here? Lisa was supposed to be with him. The nurses looked at each other, confused, but I focused on Ethan. His eyes, usually so bright, were wide with panic. "What is it, Ethan?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, but a knot of dread was forming in my stomach. He ran up to the gurney, holding out the crumpled paper. "You can't give Dad your kidney. It's not fair. He already has one." The words hung in the air, echoing in the sterile silence of the hallway. "What are you talking about, sweetie?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Ethan unfolded the paper, revealing a slightly smudged, but clearly legible, lab report. It was a kidney compatibility test. Not mine, not Sarah's. It had Michael's name and another name below it, Sarah, and the results clearly stated, "Perfect match. Proceed with transplant." The date on the report was from 6 months ago, long before Michael's condition became critical. My brain struggled to process it. Sarah was a perfect match 6 months ago, but she had told me she was a match, but not as perfect as mine. She had even shown me a different report, one that indicated a less ideal match. A cold dread began to spread through me. Ethan, still trembling, blurted out, "Mommy told me not to tell anyone, but I heard her talking to Aunt Sarah. Aunt Sarah was supposed to give Dad her kidney a long time ago, but then she got scared and said she couldn't. She told Mommy to tell everyone you were the best match, so you would do it instead." The nurses were exchanging worried glances. The surgeon, who had just stepped out to see what the commotion was, stared at Ethan, then at me, a look of confusion on his face. My world tilted. My own daughter, my Sarah, had she really lied to me? Had she allowed me to go through all of this, to prepare for a major surgery when she could have, should have, done it herself months ago? The betrayal was a physical ache, sharper than any incision. Everything made sense now, the slight evasiveness in Sarah's eyes when I talked about the surgery, her sudden busyness whenever Michael's doctors called, The pieces clicked into place, forming a picture of calculated deceit. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. Here I was, literally seconds away from going under the knife, about to donate a vital organ to my son, only to discover that my other child had potentially orchestrated this whole scenario, lying to me and to her brother to avoid her own sacrifice. The pain of my son's illness was compounded by the devastating realization of my daughter's betrayal. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have still gone through with the surgery? Would you have confronted Sarah right there? What would your first move have been? The surgeon, seeing the gravity of the situation, immediately stepped in. He calmly asked for the lab report, examined it, and then turned to me. "Mrs. Johnson, we need to understand what's happening here. This report indicates a full compatibility for your daughter, Sarah, from several months ago. Is this accurate?" I could only stare at the paper, then at Ethan, whose innocent confession had just shattered my understanding of my family. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. "Yes," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Ethan is saying that Sarah was supposed to donate her kidney to Michael, but she backed out and lied to us, saying I was a better match." The surgeon, a kind but no-nonsense man, quickly understood the implications. He looked at the nurses. "Hold the procedure. We need to investigate this immediately. Mrs. Johnson, are you comfortable speaking with your daughter before we proceed?" "Comfortable?" "No." "Furious?" "Absolutely." But Michael was still critically ill. My mind was a maelstrom of emotions, but one thought cut through the chaos. Michael needed a kidney. Regardless of Sarah's deceit, Michael's life was on the line. I nodded, my jaw clenched. "Yes, I need to speak to Sarah and Michael." The next hour was a blur of hushed conversations, frantic phone calls, and the cold, harsh light of reality. Lisa was called back, her face a mask of shock and shame when she saw Ethan and the report. She admitted everything, tears streaming down her face. Sarah had confessed to her months ago that she was scared and didn't want to go through with the surgery. She had begged Lisa to help her manipulate the situation, to make it seem like I was the only viable option. Lisa, terrified of losing Michael and feeling pressured by Sarah, had reluctantly agreed to the charade, convincing Michael that my match was superior and that Sarah's wasn't good enough. It was a desperate, cowardly act driven by fear and selfishness. Then came Sarah. When she arrived, she saw Ethan, the crumpled report in my hand, and Lisa's tear-stained face. Her defiant posture crumpled. There was no denying it. She broke down, sobbing uncontrollably, confessing her fear, her panic, her utter regret. She admitted that she had initially agreed to donate, but as the date approached, she got cold feet. She was terrified of the surgery, the recovery, the impact on her active life. She couldn't bring herself to do it, and instead of being honest, she concocted this elaborate lie, believing that I, her mother, would naturally step up. She had twisted the truth, created a fake report, and convinced Lisa to go along with it, all to avoid her own responsibility. I listened to her, my heart a hollow ache. My daughter, the one I had raised, had not only endangered her brother's life by delaying a crucial transplant, but she had also callously manipulated me, her mother, to take on the burden. The feeling of betrayal was overwhelming, almost suffocating. But then there was Michael, my son. He was lying in his own pre-op room, unaware of the drama unfolding, his life hanging in the balance. I had promised him a second chance. I had promised myself I would save him. The surgeon looked at me, his gaze steady. "Mrs. Johnson, we can proceed with your transplant. Your match is still excellent, or if you wish, we can prepare Sarah for surgery. She is also a perfect match, and her operation can be scheduled immediately, given the urgency. However, she would need to be medically cleared again, and we would need a full reevaluation given her emotional state. My decision was agonizing. Part of me wanted to walk away, to let Sarah face the consequences of her actions, to let her endure the fear she had inflicted upon me. But then I pictured Michael's pale face, his struggle, his hope. His life was more important than my anger, more important than my shattered trust. And Ethan, my sweet grandson, needed his father. I looked at Sarah, still weeping, huddled on a chair. I looked at Lisa, ashamed and heartbroken. Then I looked at the surgeon. "Proceed with my transplant," I said, my voice firm despite the tremor in my hands. "My son needs this now. There is no time to waste." The nurses quickly sprang back into action. They wheeled me into the operating room, the double doors swinging shut behind me, leaving the shattered pieces of my family behind. The last thing I heard before the anesthesia took over was Ethan's small voice, calling Grandma, "I love you." The surgery itself was a success. When I woke up, groggy and in pain, the first thing I asked was about Michael. The nurses assured me he was doing well, the kidney was working, and he was already showing signs of improvement. The relief was immense, washing over me in waves, momentarily eclipsing the bitter sting of betrayal. The recovery was difficult, as expected, but knowing Michael was recovering, knowing he had a chance at a full life again, kept me going. When Michael finally woke up and was stable enough to talk, I explained everything. I told him about Ethan's confession, Sarah's deceit, and Lisa's complicity. He was devastated. The shock, the hurt, the anger, it was all etched on his face. He struggled to reconcile the image of his loving sister with the calculating person she had become. Lisa, in her remorse, confessed everything to Michael, begging for his forgiveness. The aftermath was messy, to say the least. Michael needed time to heal, both physically and emotionally. He struggled with feelings of profound betrayal from both his sister and his wife. He and Lisa went to therapy, trying to rebuild the trust that had been so severely damaged. It was a long, arduous process, but slowly, painfully, they started to mend. Forgiveness, in their case, was a journey, not a destination. With Sarah, it was different. I forgave her, eventually, for Michael's sake, and for my own peace. But our relationship was irrevocably changed. The easy camaraderie, the trust, the unconditional love I had felt for her, was gone. It was replaced by a cautious distance, a lingering sense of disappointment. She sought therapy, too, trying to understand why she had acted so selfishly, trying to atone for her actions. She visited Michael, sat by his bedside, and tearfully begged for his forgiveness. He told her he needed time, a lot of time, and that her actions had nearly cost him his life. Ethan, my brave little whistleblower, became even more precious to me. He had, in his innocence, saved me from an even deeper, more complex web of lies, and potentially from a delay that could have been fatal for Michael. He was confused and hurt by the family drama, but he also understood that he had done the right thing. Michael is now, thankfully, on the road to a full recovery. He still has regular check-ups, but his energy is back, his color has returned, and he's able to live a normal life. He and Lisa are slowly rebuilding their marriage, one fragile brick at a time. Sarah is still trying to earn back our trust, a task that will take years, if it ever fully happens. As for me, I have a new perspective on family, on sacrifice, and on the hidden depths of human nature. I gave my son a kidney, but I also gained a painful, invaluable lesson about the complexities of love and betrayal within the very people you hold dearest. This whole ordeal taught me that sometimes the greatest sacrifices are made not just on an operating table, but in the quiet, agonizing moments of confronting difficult truths. It taught me that love can be a powerful motivator, but so can fear, and fear can twist people into unrecognizable versions of themselves. I still grapple with the question of whether I did the right thing, going through with the surgery after knowing what I knew. But ultimately, I believe I did. Michael is alive, and that was always my primary goal. So, that's my story. A family drama that played out in the most unexpected and terrifying of settings. A secret revealed that changed everything. If you were on my side, dealing with the aftermath of such a profound betrayal, please like this video. Subscribe for more stories like this, because sometimes truth is stranger and more heartbreaking than fiction. Share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. What would you have done? And do you think Sarah can ever truly be forgiven? I'll see you all in the next story.